Should you consider a RTX 2060 6GB in 2026? Well, that is the question, and it's a question of budget, because not everyone has the money for something like a 5070 or even a 5050 in today's day and age, because those cards are pretty expensive new. And when you look at something like, a bit older at this point, the 2060 came out in 2019, and even back then it was the budget card in the lineup. But it's an interesting card because of the way that the technology has unfolded. It's still very usable today, and the question is just how usable is it in modern games. The card in South Africa goes for around, I would say it's about $150, which is not a lot for a graphics card these days. If you're lucky, you can find one. I've seen them for around $120 at the best prices. And so, it's not a lot of money for a card. You can build a PC for $300 with that card in it. And if you're okay with gaming at HD, well, you can still play all of the games. So in this video here, we're going to take a look at just how well it does in gaming in 2026. So first up here, we have Resident Evil Requiem, and this is running at 1080p optimized graphics, which really just means sort of like a mixture between high and low, right? So it's basically just sort of like a medium graphics. It looks nice still. Obviously, it's a nice looking game, and FPS wise, it's running fine. This is what I always like to say. If you're fine at buying a screen that outputs 60 or 80 hertz and turning on VSync, you can get a solid 1080p 60 fps experience with this card. Now, you're not going to be pushing 1440p, that's just unrealistic, but there's going to be very few games at HD that you won't be able to play at good quality settings with really good frame rates. This is an example of an older esports title, but it runs really well. Competitive graphics, 200 or so FPS, so that's a good result. But this is not a difficult game to run. Black Myth Wukong, on the other hand, is pretty difficult. And this is at 1080p medium graphics with DLSS set to quality. And you can even push high graphics with DLSS and get around 55. And this is what I mean when I say with how the technology has unfolded. This is literally the entry level ray tracing card, right? This was the least capable ray tracing card 9 years ago, and that still is true today, but it runs games that this game came out like a month ago, and using DLSS, using the technology, you're not going to have access to all of the newest stuff and the frame generation and all of that, but even just the LSS, it's going to give you a usable gaming experience. And this is running at 1080p optimized graphics, but it's at almost 100 FPS, right? So you could push this to maybe even a high while using DLSS, and it's still going to be a pretty good experience. And I mean, this game is just really well coded and optimized, so kudos to them for doing that. But it's an example of playing one of the newest games at, very respectable settings and visuals, with a card that is $120 and, 8 or 9 years old. So you definitely can still game on it. Space Marine 2 is a little bit more difficult to run. But, even so, if you're okay with playing with DLSS quality at 1080p, you're going to be able to run it. And this is going to be around 70 FPS. Might drop to, you see a little drop there when you use abilities and stuff, but above 50 FPS gameplay, relatively smooth frame times. It's just a good, fun gaming experience. And if you're okay with going second hand, you can build a PC for like $250 to $300 with a 2060 in it, and I mean, very usable still. So it's interesting. This game is also a very new game. This might be a bridge too far in terms of getting a good visual quality. So this is at 1080p low graphics with DLSS quality. On the video, it doesn't seem that bad, to be honest. I've seen the game look really smudgy, but this doesn't look that bad to me. And you know, it is getting around 60 FPS, so that's relatively impressive. But you do have to consider this computer is using a very strong gaming CPU with a 3D cache, which very few people, you're not going to be using this card with this CPU. You're going to be using this card with something like a 3600 from AMD, or like an i5 7400 or something, you know, an older PC for the most part. Looking at another esports favorite, the classic Counter-Strike 2, and this is going to be fine. You're not going to have an issue with this. And, you know, that's the thing, is if you just want to play games like these, you know, competitive games, maybe some Need for Speed, you know, just fun classic gaming, nothing AAA, nothing too hectic. A PC like this is more than what you need. There's no need to buy a big expensive PC to just play Counter-Strike. Cyberpunk, another game that's quite difficult to run. It's not recent anymore, but it still looks good. And this is running at ultra graphics, 1080p DLSS, and it is getting around 60. So this seems to be the 60 FPS HD card, which is pretty impressive if you're willing to use DLSS. At native, it's not going to do quite that well. The new Mafia game came out about a year or so ago. This one is dipping a bit, so this is low quality with TSR enabled. I assume the game doesn't have DLSS. Again at 1080p, but you know, this is 50 FPS, so it's a playable experience. It's not an optimal one, but it is playable. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, another recent game, another good looking game, and this one is getting around 76, 1080p high graphics, DLSS quality. This is an example of a game where you could probably even disable DLSS and still get a good frame rate. Last of Us Part 2 with medium textures, high graphics, no DLSS. This is getting around 60 FPS. And, I mean, that's a very good result, and it's a very nice looking game. So this is an example of AAA gaming, and it can be done well on this card. And this looks very smooth. The frame time is very stable. Another recent game, Arc Raiders, about 80 FPS at medium graphics 1080p with DLSS, DLAA, anti-aliasing. A good looking game, not the most difficult to run, but again, this is an example of maybe between esports and AAA, and this runs fine. It's not a competitive shooter, so you don't need to have the quickest reflexes, and you are getting around 70 FPS. So, you know, I'm not going to go through the whole list here. We'll take a look at Spider-Man 2 because that's quite difficult to run. Medium graphics, DLSS quality, 60 FPS. So that's the thing with this card, right? It seems to just be a 60 FPS 1080p DLSS card. And if you're on a budget and you're okay with not having the latest and greatest graphical features, not having high refresh rate, and okay with playing at HD, but you know, you could this PC is just going to be so cheap to build that you're gonna be able to build this for way under what a PS5 or an Xbox Series X costs. You could probably build this for less than what a Series S costs, and the PS4 Pro is more expensive than this. So, you know, it's a viable option. This is another recent game, Battlefield 6, and you know, low graphics 1080p DLSS, but it is getting around 80 FPS, so very playable. So I think the answer with this is, should you consider this? If you really are on a tight budget and you just want to have fun with your friends or in single player games, it's a working graphics card, it's a working PC, and it seems like there's nothing that it can't play. It does have ray tracing, so you'll even be able to play the ray tracing enabled games like Doom. So you really can't misstep much here. Now, would I recommend it? Not if you have the budget for something else, but you know, if it's a budget thing, if you can't afford anything else, I would definitely say this is worth taking a look at, just because it performs fine. You know, dollar to FPS wise, it's going to be amazing. It's going to give you amazing results. So I think I would recommend it in certain scenarios. It's definitely still usable, and yeah, I'm pretty impressed. What do you think? Is this something you would consider if you are on a budget? Because we don't all have money for the latest graphics cards, right? There's other things in life that are more important, but doesn't mean you can't game. You can still get one for really cheap. So that's good to know. Can you game on a really old 6 GB entry-level RTX card, the RTX 2060 in 2026? Yes, you can.